The most common question I've gotten recently is, or has been, and probably still is, how do you do your research? I've gotten this question from people who want to build an AI agent version of me, which is kind of creepy. I've also gotten this question from people who want to become content creators and just want to know, how can I enter into like the yield farming content space? I've also, of course, got it from LPs, hedge funds, family offices who just want to know what my flow is when finding opportunities. So today, without giving too much of my secret sauce, I'm going to try to explain how I, as a yield farmer, look for opportunities in DeFi. Because if you're new to DeFi, it probably seems impossible. It seems like insurmountably difficult. And if you're trying to use crypto Twitter for yield farming opportunity information, there's probably limited resources. And I would say my Twitter is probably one of the few resources that could be actually helpful. Anyways, let's dive in. I've done videos before on like DeFi Llama yields. I think for the beginner, it's probably the best place to find opportunities because you can sort by what kind of yields you want. And before you start yield farming, you should always have a thesis. Typically for me, my thesis is I want single delta exposure. And that just means like, I don't want impermanent loss. There are some cases where I don't mind impermanent loss, like full range liquidity that's highly incentivized. So for Barachain, those IBGT, STBGT incentives on infrared and stride, those I didn't mind with like the wrap bear BTC or wrap bear ETH pair, because you're going to have minimal impermanent loss. I was kind of bullish on both assets and the APRs were over 140%. So it was good, right? Now, typically, again, I like Delta 1 or like no mixed Delta exposure. So I'm looking for, if we go to DeFi Llama, I'm looking for attributes and then no IL. Now, if you click on no IL, what that means is you're not going to have volatile pairs. So no ETH USDCs, no like ETH Link, no altcoin USDC pairs. You're just going to have whatever asset you sort of want to be exposed to. This is, you know, ironically, like this is all assets, but you're mostly seeing ETH here. And then I'm going to go by TVL. So I'm going to do a minimum TVL, probably of $1 million. I mean, you could do like $500,000. Now, the reason why you want to have such a high minimum, even if you're like a small fish or like little farmer, is because you don't want other people to dilute your yields either. Like you might not dilute it with $1,000 or with like, you know, $500, but if it's an easily dilutable yield by any whale, any dolphin, you know, any six-figure account out there, then it's probably not going to last for very long. And I tend to want to be in positions for like at least a few weeks. My like golden metric is if I can squeeze out 5%, like cash on cash yield or like ETH on ETH yield. Like if I can get a 5% ROI on my underlying, I am stoked. That's huge. That's, you know, like the annual return of most TradFi instruments. So I'm pretty stoked there. So that's kind of what I go for. I want to be in a position long enough to make some like 5% ROI, like expected value add. And then if I can, I'm stoked. And I want to do that, like, of course, under a year. If I can do that in a couple months, I'm really excited. If I can do it in 3 months, fine. That's kind of like what I would go for. Okay, so what do we get? We get like a bunch of 2%. I'm not super excited about that. I'm not really looking for that because that would take years to get 5%. So then you can go APY and then you can do a minimum. Let's just say, you know, 15%. Let's see, what has no IL is out there for 15%. And then you're looking for a nice 30-day average. Why would you go for a 30-day average? Because that just means this is probably a little bit more consistent. So usual yields, okay, this is unusual X. This is the usual token. You could neutralize that. Now you have to know sort of what you can do. This is another huge part. Like if you don't know what strategies exist, then you won't know if you're staring them right in the face. Like think of a gold panner. Most people, if they went gold panning today with no prior experience, wouldn't even know if they had gold in their pan because it's like kind of brown and dirty. It looks kind of like other pieces of rocks. They wouldn't know that they're looking at gold. They wouldn't know how to look. They wouldn't know how to find it. Likewise for yields, if you don't know the strategies and what those strategies look like, you're not going to realize, oh, okay, so usual X, that's a yield denominated in usual. APY of 83%, 30 average 90%. You could probably neutralize that on, I don't know, Hyperliquid or something, and get maybe some sort of delta neutral yield of like 15-20%. So let's go usual. Maybe usual is not. Let's go altcoins. Here we go. Okay, so looks like wow, it's actually positive funding here. So you know you're probably also going to have to build tools. So if we go over to my extended funding rate comparer, this is a tool that I built a while ago. Thank you, Eve. Super helpful here. Short, so long leverage is one, right? And then you could say, okay, maybe APR, 80% seems pretty consistent. And then short, I'll do 2x leverage. Funding rate is 10%. And so your overall yield here is going to be 60%. That's really good. That's a really good yield. So that's a delta neutral yield about 60%. Or you could take a long bet if you wanted to, but long bet on altcoins is totally up to you. If you were long usual and you didn't know it, though you could have been getting 90% on it or whatever, or 80%, then you're seriously missing out on your underlying assets. So then you have like stablecoins here, and of course you can sort by stablecoins, so like all US stablecoins. And then you just have like all these opportunities here, SUSDE. Whether or not the stablecoin is up for debate, it's technically a vault token. All right, Eve. Okay. Get out of here. But like what I'm saying is you have all these opportunities here. Now, the APRs on DeFi Llama are not always insanely accurate. Like there are cases where sometimes you'll go and it'll just be completely off or not even close, or sometimes you'll like... some of these opportunities are outdated or they don't exist anymore, or like they're misleading. So you also have to like go and check them out. You can't just use this as your only source of information. Also, for that delta neutral yield on usual, which we just looked at, if you didn't know you could neutralize that, you wouldn't know you could get 60% delta neutral yield using Hyperliquid. Also, potentially farming hype points. So there's also narratives you have to know about. So Hyperliquid, right, had a huge season 1. If you're not in the trenches, if you're not like a DeFi native, you probably didn't know that. If you are DeFi native, you of course knew that. It was one of the biggest airdrops of this entire cycle, if not the biggest airdrop. Now, again, if you're not in the trenches, you probably don't know there's going to be a season 2. If you are, you probably do know there's a season 2. So you have to also be aware of constant narratives. That's what having a community is most helpful for. Like Hype season 2 is going to happen. How do you farm that? Well, they say there's 2 major ways to do that. Hype staking, which only gets you like 2% APR, and using the actual platform. Also, using the chain. So it's Hype EVM. There's a bunch of protocols on there. If you want to do airdrop farming, like go ahead, just touch everything, right? Like go and just play with every single protocol on there with a small amount of capital, and you'll probably get some points. Okay. Now, going back. So you have to know what's going on. There's a lot of stablecoin plays. There's also a lot of ETH plays. So you could just do ETH. Same thing here. I wish ETH was like at the top of the list. Like why wouldn't that be? No, not Eve. And same thing. So you can see a lot of APRs here. TVL, here's one example of where you would want to think twice. You have an APY of 182%, but then a 30-day average of 0.25%. Probably this is not going to be a consistent yield. It's probably a anomalous yield. Maybe there's some metric that got slightly off. Maybe something has gone weird, and you wouldn't want to enter this like today, assuming you're going to get 180% tomorrow. Careful, don't fall off. All right, Eve, go in the living room, and I'll give you juice after I'm done. Okay? Okay. All right, I love you. Okay, well, we'll look at it later. Close the door. Okay. Thank you. This one. Yeah. So you get a lot of ETH yields, and you can look at them, analyze them. I like a lot of them that are on Merkle because Merkle is a reward system. I also use Merkle. For example, I'm collecting my Barachain emissions via Merkle. You have to also know about emissions programs. There's so much to know. But again, DeFi Llama is a great starting place. So let's go back to strategies, right? When I'm looking at a strategy, what I want to know or think about is what major strategies exist that are in accordance with my narrative. Again, my narratives are typically single delta exposure. So the best yields for single delta exposure are staking, LPing like pairs, and leveraging, typically leveraging staking yields. So with leveraging staking yields, I also know that money markets are the most exploited type of protocol in DeFi. So I'm going to look for big money markets that have Lindy, that have incredible amount of money behind their audits, and that have like bug bounty programs. So Aave, Compound, Euler, that's where I'm going to be looking, or Dolomite. And so let's go look at those places, and I'll show you sort of how to suss out where a good loop might be found. So Euler, they make it super simple. You just go to borrow and they'll tell you what the maxed leveraged APR will be. So I go to Euler. This is Berachain because they just announced they have a big incentive package. I think it's, I forgot how big it was, but it's large. It's all in Bera. So I like that. You collect it on Merkle. Here, Honey, you have to know what the assets are too. So there's so much in the trench research that you just have to be doing constantly. If Honey is a stablecoin, and you know it is because you sort by stablecoins, then you want to know what Honey is. Honey is effectively wrapped USDC. It's backed only by USDC on Berachain. Honey, okay, wrapped USDC, got it. BYUSD, I have no idea what that is. Go look that up. Oh, BYUSD is PayPal. It's PYUSD for Berachain. It's PayPal USD, got it. I'm comfortable with USDC. I'm comfortable with PayPal's USD. So these pairs I'm okay with. Like, know your assets for sure, do your research, and then look at the APRs. Now, 67%, that's fantastic, love it. But, and here's the big but, only $53,000 of liquidity. So this would not be something I immediately ape into because that's just not enough. Like it's going to be really volatile. One day it could be a positive max ROE. The next day it could be deeply negative. And so those are the things you should be aware of. And so for other ones, okay, there's 161,000. Maybe this is a little bit less sketchy. I'll go into that, and it's high enough. So actually I am in this one. But I'm also in so I am farming both of these. And the reason why I'm doing that is because if the interest rates work against me on this one, where there's a lot of liquidity, then they'll work for me on this one, where there's also incentives. So I'm farming both of these simultaneously because because effectively, like they are, if the interest rate spikes on one of them, then the supply rate will spike on the other one. So you have to know how all these things work, which is just time in the markets. So that's cool. I'm in these ones. And of course there's like a bunch of chains to look at, but what you're looking for is, for me, again, I like pairs. So, USD on cash, USD on USD. Awesome. So we have 54% for PT wrap stake. Actually, I'm probably going to enter this one. PT wrap stake USDC or USD. This expires in May. 54% ROE right now. No incentives on this. So that's kind of cool that it's not based on incentives. It's all organic yield. And there's $4 million of liquidity. So pretty deep liquidity. I like it. If I wanted to be a points farmer, I would go with like an SCUSD, USDC. But I know, know your yields. The organic underlying yield here is 4%. So it's a net negative carry. Sorry, well, it's not a net. It's a negative carry. Gross, I guess. I don't know what you would say. With just the interest rates, because you're getting paid 3% on collateral, paying 5%. But with the incentives, which are in wrapped S, then it's a positive trade, 14%, and then you get a bunch of points. Man, there's so much research. You would then want to know what those points are worth. And so you could go crazy, like I think Sana on YouTube has done, or not YouTube, on Twitter has done, like I have done in the past, and try to value a point yourself. Or you could use the Pendle markets, which have millions of dollars of volume and liquidity that have priced in points. And so the way you do that is you go over to Pendle, one of the greatest apps in all of DeFi, helped us with so much yields. They've been the yield leader of the cycle for sure. Go to Sonic Chain, and then you said, okay, so wrap staked USD. How many points? It has a 12-point multiplier. That is the multiplier for used wrapped staked SCUSD or any of the rings assets. Cool. How would you know that? You just gotta know. You gotta figure that stuff out. I can't tell you everything. For me, I talk to the team. I look at the documents, and I just learn. You'll find a 12x Sonic multiplier here. Okay. You go to Silo. You'll also see there's a 12x multiplier for SCUSD. Well, why is it 12? 12 is such a weird number. Well, if you go to the Sonic site, you'll find that it's a 6 points base multiplier. But if you use it in DeFi, it gets doubled. That's why it's 12. So then you'll see the PT is at 10.66%. What does that mean? Well, it means that whatever underlying yield plus the points yield is being valued at 10% APR. So is there an underlying yield? Well, you'd click on this and see, is there an underlying yield? No. I guess there is. Look at that. There's some underlying yield now. Go Veda. Congratulations. So there is an underlying yield, apparently, 1.9%, roughly 2%. And then you have 8% of premium. So that 8% of premium is points speculative value. So we go back over to Euler. We look at SCUSD. We remember that SCUSD does not have the intrinsic yield of wrapped STK SCUSD. So SCUSD is only going to have that 8%. So we do 8% times leverage. It's 8 times 10. That is an implied additional yield of 80%. So we're getting 14% in organic lending yield plus incentives plus 80% possibly in the form of those points that we'll get in June. How do you know you're going to get that in June? Because you have to know the points campaigns. Sonic has said that it's a 6-month campaign. They're giving out 200 million. 25% is going to be immediately going to you, then 75% as a vesting NFT, which you can sell if you want to, but probably at a severe discount. So yeah, you have to know what you're getting into. So know your points programs, just dig into the Twitter accounts, ask the team, hop on the Discord, or as I always recommend, join the DeFi Dojo and just ask us, because we're always in the trenches learning these things. So we're like a centralized think tank you can just come to with your questions. Of course, you have to pay for it. It's a premium service, but it exists. So there you go. Now, let's just say you don't want to use Euler, you want to use something else. You want to use something like Aave, right? Super huge protocol, your crazy low risk profile, and you don't even know where to start. Well, first, look for interest-bearing assets. What are interest-bearing assets? They're things with prefixes. So, wrapped staked ETH, wrapped EtherFi ETH. CBDC looks like one, but it's not, right? It's just wrapped Bitcoin. ETH. All of these things have some sort of yield. Figure out what that yield is. USDS is actually a really good example. So USDS has roughly a 6.5% APR. So, okay, 6.5% APR on USDS or SUSDS if you're using Compound, or if you're using, I think Euler maybe has SUSDS. 6.5%, awesome. Can I borrow against that at a lower rate? Well, USDC's 5.27%. It's a 1% arbitrage. Okay, cool. There's a 1% difference between the collateral yield and the borrow cost. Can I loop it? Can I leverage it? Absolutely. Go to details. Details. 75% LTV. E-mode, 90% LTV. They let you go a little bit higher. 90% LTV, I'll tell you guys, that's 10x leverage. So 10x leverage, you multiply 10 times the yield, so 10 times 6.5 is 65%, and then leverage minus 1, 9 times the borrow cost, 9 times 5.5. So I have a little calculator app. 9 times 5.5 is 49.5, so we'll call it 50. 65 minus 50, 15%. 15% is going to be your net yield there. Probably not enough for me to get out of bed. You can get a 15% fixed rate yield on like Pendle or Spectra, so I would go there instead. So let's talk about that, right? We've talked about money markets, which are loops. So with looping, and Fluid is also amazing for this. We should look at Fluid, but there's just not enough time. So know all of the major money markets, and you can use DeFi Llama for that too. So if you just wanted to go DeFi and then categories, and then lending, which is number 1, because where all the TVL is for looping. You can see, okay, well, what are the top 20, lending protocols? Maple, does Maple really count? I guess they do. And you can say, okay, well, I'm only going to use the top 15 because that's all I'm like comfortable with. And so you'll just click on them one by one and look for high collateral yield versus low borrowing costs with deep liquidity. That's what you want. That's it. Again, high collateral yield, low borrowing cost, deep liquidity. 3 things. If you can find those, you can find great looping opportunities. You should also know, are there origination fees? Do they penalize you for exiting early? Are there anything know those things. But that's how you find good looping yields. So looping yields, like pairs on LPs, those are a little bit harder to find good yields on. It's possible. You can use Oku Trade, I think is like a good place to simulate yields. Reaver as well is decent, but I use Oku, so though shout out to Reaver, they've also been good. But let's just say, I don't know, you wanted to look at a like pair, you wanted to look at wrapped EtherFi, I don't know, there's no yield on that. You wanted to do an exotic pair, like Liquid, Barra, ETH, right? Something crazy. So 1 point, yeah, that's it. Cool, 1% pool, awesome. Volume for 7 days is 100. Is that $100 or is that 100 ETH? Because that would be a lot. Well, let's look. Okay, so here, actually, I'll go trade. Yeah, I want to do trade. We'll actually look at this pair. So this is the pair we want to look at. Liquidity? Man, they've made it weird. Position analytics. Can I do that? Is this gonna work? I think this is the right one. No. Oh, they've changed their UI. Okay, well, I'm gonna go here and then pool. Yeah, this is what I want. This is probably what I want. Then I'm gonna search for liquid Spectra ETH. Oh, I don't want the order book. I want position manager. Here we go. Liquid ETH. Okay, awesome. So let's just say like this is the range we want, and we want to run a back test for the past 30 days on one liquid ETH and one wrapped ETH. Click back test, and what do we get? 31% APR. That's amazing for an ETH yield. You know, like again, it's the same thing. Know your yields and know how to analyze them, and you'll be doing good. And you can also change this range. Like there's no need to have max price that high. Keep a little tiny itsy bitsy mean price, and then refresh. This backtest data would be 24%, so apparently that would have been out of range. Anyways, run some backtests, know your yields. Like, we're not done yet, all right? People ask me, how do you do your research? They expect a quick answer. It's not a quick answer. There's so much to do. So we talked about Pendle. Pendle is easy to like get a flash snapshot of like which yields are out there. So like stablecoins, you just do stables, all chains, boom, 16% fixed, 16% fixed, 15% fixed. These are awesome. These are great. Where's the liquidity? 1.2 million, kind of thin. 6 million, decent. 17 million, awesome, love it, not bad. Click the PT, enter, you're done. Like that's the easiest thing to do. Can these be leveraged? Sometimes, usually on Morpho. How would you find that out? Well, you could go to Morpho and search each one individually, but most of these end up on Contango. So I would just go to Contango, simplified USD, and you're just going to see a bunch populate. There's a bunch of them just going to pop up. So you can use the filters if you want. And what this will do is allow you to like look to see if they have it. June is kind of great. May is great. March, you don't want the March ones because they expire in like a week. But a lot of those are going to be up here because rates kind of spike towards the expiry. Amount, I love this tool. So amount to invest, again, same thing. I put like $100,000. Not that I'm going to invest $100,000 because I want yields that don't get diluted really fast. So here we have March, not interested, March, not interested, March, not interested, again, not interested, not interested. May, oh, no, I'm kind of interested. How much? $3 million to like leverage at 9x? That's awesome. $3 million is not how much liquidity is available to borrow. $3 million is how much principal you could put and leverage 9x. So it's like $27 million to borrow. That's amazing. So 39% organic yield for SUSD on the PT. That's, we get SRUSD, USD, RUSD. I love this loop. I'm in this one. So that's great. Now you have to know what to think about when leveraging. One, there's a fee to use Contango because they're doing work for you. So there's like a 5 bip on your notional. So if you're 20x leverage, which is crazy leverage, it's a 1% fee to enter and a 1% fee to exit, 2%. So at 25% APR, of course there's points on this, at 25% APR, 2% is 1/10. You're going to take almost one whole month. Now this yield's been going on for a long time, one whole month to recoup that. So consider that. Is this a long-term position for you? If it is, fantastic, no worries. If it's not, be mindful. The PTSU, okay, well, 39%, 9x leverage, you're only going to pay 0.5% to enter, 0.5% to exit, 1% altogether. That's not really that bad at 39%. You'll make that up in a week or two. Sweet. And it expires in probably a month, 29th of May. No, 2 months. So you have 2 months in a position at what's 49% right now. You get fixed rate on the collateral. I like it, right? It's good. It's good. And if the yield tanks, you earn your yield faster. Or sorry, if the IY, the implied yield, tanks on Pendle, you make your yield faster. Those are the kind of things you have to know and think about. Again, it's not like everything's not intuitive. It's not just you think it and you know it. There's no place, just click on it and, oh, here are all the opportunities. You have to know what to look for. And once you know what to look for, then just start poking around. And one thing I'll also say is, let's say you want to poke around. Like I showed you how to find all the lending protocols, the big lending protocols, and maybe you're chain agnostic. Doesn't matter if this one is on Tron. You'll use Tron. This one's on Morpho's on 14 chains. Okay, well, where? Which chains? I'm going to go check out those chains because I like Morpho. I'm going to go check out the chains for Aave because I like Aave. I'm going to go check out the chains for Dolomite because I like Dolomite. Things like that. I'm going to go check out. No, I'm not going to check out Venus. No shade to Venus, actually. They're great on Binance Smart Chain. I mean, one other thing to say is you should not just stick to Western DeFi. You should look at Asian DeFi as well, because yields exist over there that are often untapped by Western markets. All right, last thing I want to show you guys is we talked about fixed rate, fixed date, right, with Pendle, but Pendle's not the only fixed rate, fixed date protocol. It's my favorite. It's the best. It's the biggest, has the deepest liquidity. It is probably the safest because of Lindy and because of all the money they pour into audits. It has the most composability. So there's a lot of things going for it. But if you want to go see if there are similar types of yields on smaller protocols, there are a couple. So there's Spectra, which I think I have up here somewhere. I entered Spectra. Let me show you what I did yesterday, right? So it's not up here. I thought I had it. Spectra. So the reason why Spectra is neat is because they will launch markets before Pendle because smaller protocols find it harder to get onto Pendle because Pendle's so huge. Pendle permissionless is coming soon. I think it's going to change the game. But in the meantime, Spectra is kind of like a testing ground for a lot of these yields. Also, Spectra team, been around for a long time, APY and before. A lot of the like Llama builders are associated with it or like know of it. So they're not a small or untested team at all, or they're not newbies. That's what I would say. All right, so I go to fixed rates, I sort by APY, and then I'm just looking around. So, hey, USDO Open Eden, that sounds great. 29%. I like Open Eden. $64,000 of liquidity. So let me show you why that's a problem. You click on this, and let's say you want to do, I don't know, $10,000, right? Well, then the fixed rate APR went from 29%, which is awesome, to 9%, which is probably not awesome. And you can do better than that on Pendle, right? With assets you probably know a little better. So that is the big issue for me. That's the reason why it's not so exciting. Thin liquidity is not great for smaller users. But hey, if you're just trying, like if you're maybe you got $2,000, right? And you are all stables and you just want to beat a savings account, maybe that's better for you, right? Yesterday, I was just skimming these yields, and the Superform yield, this one right here, YSUSD, had spiked all the way to 36%, this spike right here. And because I was surfing and I found that, I immediately entered with as much size as I could get at over 30% fixed, and I got it. Now that the IY has gone down, I've made 1% ROI immediately in one day. So that's like 365% annualized. That's great. I could exit probably right now. No, I couldn't. Well, yeah, I would make $100, but I'd make $100 because of the slippage. But so like, that's cool, right? That's awesome. Here's my 1%. If I could exit, atomically, you can't. I have to go through IY. So I'm going to wait until expiry here and get my 30% fixed rate. But all I'm saying is there are a lot of opportunities out there. There's also some on Solana. So, what is your thesis? Are you long Solana? Go to Camino. Are you long on do you like fixed rates? Go to RateX. Know the protocols that exist to fit your thesis. Here's RateX. Trade. Man. There's just so much out there, guys. And to ask me how to research, it's such a weird question because my research is so scattered. It's not hyper systemic. Mostly what I'm doing, here's a big thing. Mostly what I'm doing is I'm in the trenches. I am in the trenches of Telegram. So I am constantly talking to teams and they're telling me their opportunities. So it's like, 1, I'm looking out and finding them. 2, they're coming to me and talking to me. 3, I used to go into Discords and just ask all about them. Now, because I've sort of grown my brand, people will come to me and we have the DeFi Dojo, and Dojo members are out in the Discords. So having a group, creating your own think tank or joining a think tank is one of the best ways to offload a lot of this research that is otherwise probably incredibly difficult for someone who's not doing DeFi 24/7, who's not like whole job in life is literally DeFi. So I would say if you can't do all of this research, find a group that's doing it and benefit from their condensed versions. Like we have a daily periodical called the Dojo Digest, where we kind of break down what's happened. We also have a weekly video where we break down sort of the yields we're looking at. And that's a great way to get a condensed form of all of our research on a weekly basis. Should we do a newsletter? I don't know. Do you guys want a newsletter? Or you'd be interested in a newsletter where we talk about this stuff? Who knows? Who knows? If you guys are, let me know, and maybe we'll do a newsletter. But so on RateX, just know your protocol. You can get fixed rate on like Solana, 21%. That's a really good fixed rate, especially if you're bullish on Solana, and they're going to have a big RWA narrative in the next like quarter, I'd say, maybe 2 quarters. Could make Solana blow up, like in a good way. We'll see. But you don't just get the fixed rate. You also get X rate X points. That could be interesting if Solana DeFi blows up, again in a good way, and RateX becomes the de facto Pendle of Solana, because Pendle is like the biggest yield farming protocol in EVM land, period. So if RateX can capture that market, then these RateX points for season 1 could be really big. You also, fixed date, stablecoin yields, you want one that's longer than 8 days away. I think the best one is like USD asterisk at 12.5% fixed plus 4x rate points. So know what exists, know what's out there, and go look for it, you know? Like Compound on base chain, USDS. You have an SUSDS yield. Well, you might not know what that is. It's 6.5%. How do you know? You just gotta look, right? You can go to the website for Sky and see what is the yield. It's 6.5%. Okay, well, what's the net borrows? 4.66%. Okay, well, how much can I leverage? 93% collateral factor? Okay, well, how much leverage is that? Well, it's 1 divided by 1 minus collateral factor. So I think it's going to be around X. But maybe you don't know. Maybe you're just trying to find out what that is. Okay, make a tool. Let's see. LTV is 93%. 4x leverage. Great. Awesome. Borrow cost, 4.7. Collateral yield, 6.5. Max yield, 30% on stablecoins, on Compound, on base chain. Fantastic. Love it. Why is it better than ETH chain? Because base chain might have an airdrop, right? Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe they will. But low gas, great yield, stablecoins. Awesome, right? Know your stuff. I think it's so hard to like teach people to research because it's just years of doing it. Like if someone was asking, how do you be a professional bicycler? They can give you some tips and tricks, but you're not going to become a professional bicycler from their tips and tricks. You're going to become a professional bicycler from biking every single day and like doing it as if your livelihood depends on it, which for me it does. Like, this is my full-time job. So this was a lot. Hopefully this answers some of the questions on how I do my research, which is have a thesis, know which strategies express that thesis, know where to look for those theses. DeFi Llama is an amazing tool for early users, and get comfortable with math because, you know, a lot of the time it requires some degree of mathematical use to get a decent estimate of what you're going to get, right? EV, expected value. What is your expected value over what amount of time? Again, I'm looking for a 5% ROI over a maximum of a 4-month time horizon. If I think I can get that, then I'm excited. Again, I look for cash on cash, ETH on ETH, BTC on BTC. Those are kind of yields I like, and that's what I go for. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this will help somebody out there at least understand either how insurmountable DeFi research can be, or get super excited about doing this himself, or be motivated to join a group like the DeFi Dojo where we do the research together. So thanks for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.